Welcome to The Mystery, a series of conversations on the mystery of life as ceremony with Ioana Maria Iliut of The Gentle Healing Way and Melanie Drisceoil of Sanctor Cree. Our intention for this podcast is to bring light into dark spaces in these dark times, to sit with the tender places within us as individuals and in the collective. We're bringing our hearts together with the intention to speak into what needs to be addressed. We intend to do it as gently as possible, and along the way you can certainly expect giggles and rants and everything in between. We're striving to bring some common sense into the spirituality world, the murkiness, the confusion, the chaos of it all. And we want to bring the right questions that help promote safety so that people can find the right paths, the right teachers for themselves, and have good guides of what questions to ask when and how. This podcast is intended for people who are in the early days of their spiritual awakening, and equally other walkers on the way alike, whether you've been doing this for a few months or a few years. You are welcome here, and thank you for bringing your heart to this space. So welcome to The Mystery. Our next episode is about to begin. Hello, listening ears, to this podcast space that is still in its becoming. We're still feeling into what this is and how it is. So, I'm Mel and I'm here with Ioana. And we're here to sit and talk about the work, the way, and some of the things that we've picked up along the way from doing the work, sitting with people, sitting in tender spaces and the places that hurt, especially in these crazy times that we're in. And we just sat in opening the space, and one of the things that came is that, to bring some light in the dark spaces is our intention. So we're bringing our hearts together to see what comes. So Ioana, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello everybody, it's great to have this new space to talk, and thank you, Mel, for being the driving force the driving force of nature that made it all happen. Like you're saying, what we want to do is we want to bring light into dark times, and it is our intention to speak about those things that we feel that need to be addressed and need to be spoken. We're going to do our best to do it in a gentle way. We're gonna really try. I promise. And there will be giggles and there might be rants, but bear with us. And we hope it's gonna be exactly the right thing for the right hearts and for the right ears. And so just as a quick introduction, my name is Ioana Maria Iliut. I'm originally from Sibiu, that is in Transylvania, that is in Romania, and I am currently based in Cork City, in Ireland. I'm saying that I'm based here because I roam the world, and I'm happy doing so. My Irish friends say I'm like the wind. Today in one place and tomorrow in the other. And
which, like, as in just back from London last night and going to Romania in like 3 days?
Yeah.
And currently in Cove.
As one does. And currently in Cove.
As you do. Yeah.
As you do. That just makes me happy. That just makes me happy. Doing the work and seeing people, and the more different, the better for me. Yeah, my story is, well, for me, it's the only one I know, so it's normal, I guess. I've always been interested in the unknown and in the unseen, or in those things that I knew were there, but nobody really, as a child, I didn't have any reference point in people telling me that they actually were. So as a child, I would have been completely obsessed with anything that was remotely connected to the invisible world or explaining. I actually, since a very young child, I would have really loved people and watching people and seeing what makes people happy and what makes people sad. And a big part of it, especially growing up, was just this really strong sense of introspection in seeing what made me tick and what things on the outside provoked what feelings on the inside and how that whole dynamic worked. I was very, very fascinated with it since I was a child, and thank God that never changed. And then my journey just went through, first, thank God for the internet, because it brought the knowledge that I was not the only weirdo in the world. And the relief that came with it, because honestly, I really, really thought that I was the only person on the planet that was thinking and feeling things that way. And apparently I'm not. Yay!
And what age were you when you had that revelation?
Probably I would have been around 17 or 18, something like that. When the interwebs reached Romania. Yeah. And so that was kind of it. And then I went through, I would just inquire about everything that I could get my hands on. And the first thing was neo-paganism. So I delved in that. Of course, there was nothing like that in Romania. So it was a bunch of us kids who were just translating texts and seeing what felt right. And that was actually a very good thing to do it. And even since then, I was like, I didn't want to do any of the practices. I just wanted to understand it first. And I really wanted for it to be safe. And now I'm very grateful that I was that way. And then things happened, and then that did not feel right anymore. And then I took a few years of working through my body, like basically prayer through body, and I was actually dancing salsa for 2 years.
Nice.
And that was my prayer. That was my moving prayer.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. And then 2007 came, and then the first workshop on like neo-shamanism came into Romania. The Michael Harner method from the Foundation of Shamanic Studies. And then that opened doors to go to South America and to be there with the indigenous people, and I felt so good there. And then the neo-shamanism stopped working for me as well, because it was missing something that I didn't know what it was, but it was missing some fundamental piece. And then I took a year off, and then life just absolutely forced me to delve back in the sense that it grabbed me by the neck and it threw me in water and it told me swim. And then I met my Native American ex-partner, and together we traveled the world and we did the work for about 8 years together. And that way I really lived, in the Native American teachings. It wasn't like, we do through ceremonies and 4 workshops. It was like literally living that life and that way of life for so many years. Yeah. So that is probably what has the biggest imprint on my life. And then in parallel with that, I met Jared Lyons and was introduced to his work, and that gave an entirely new dimension to my own work and to where I am to how I work. And that's kind of where I am today. I'm like a mixture of our old ways from back home. I would have been brought up in a family where music and tradition was valued, and then all the teachings and the knowledge and the people whom I've met along the way and who have taken me in and who have just taken me in as one of their own, and who've had a huge imprint on my life. And that's what I am. I'm a blend of many things, quite stubborn, and still to this day trying to do the best that I can for things to be safe. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. What about you, Mel? Tell us your story.
I feel like we're gonna go through this in layers, because even you sharing has brought up things for me, and I know we'll go around in a few circles. But so I, like you, when I was a kid, like really fascinated by people. My dad used to always tell me I would stare for way longer than was appropriate when I was too old. You know, like 7, staring at people in the shop, like my mouth open, kind of like, what's going on with them? And growing up, I would have been really connected to animals. Like, since I was really young, I knew I wanted to work with animals or be close to them. I think there was something in their intuitive naturalness that just felt comfortable to me, like that wordless communication. So that was always a big driver for me. And so all the way up through school and college, that was always like my guiding light, was like, I want to work with animals or nature, and kind of found, you know, a twisty turny path towards that. When I was going through school, and as I was growing up, I had no connection really with the divine or, you know, religion or anything. I think up until the point I was about 7, I had some expectation of there being something to do with this whole communion thing that everyone was going on about. I was a bit like, oh, what's this going to be? And then after, my life actually got more challenging, because I had, my younger brother would have had colic and would have been crying a lot, and things just got more intense at home. And, you know, which happens when you're 7, you start realising more of the world, and it got a little bit more intense. So that definitely flattened any idea that I'd had that something to do with God would open things for me at that age. And I hadn't been baptised. I was baptised when I was 3. My mom wasn't religious and my dad was, so at home the faith was like, my dad had a very quiet faith, but it wasn't really a big force in our life. But when I was 3, my grandfather died, and that was definitely a really significant moment that still shapes me in this opening to grief at a really deep level of my being. And also, at the time in the Eurovision Song Contest, there was a song by this woman called Charlotte. It was called Take Me to Your Heaven, which we got on an album, and after he died it was like on repeat for like years, and I still love listening to it. So I had some sense of like heaven, and I would write little post-it notes to my granddad outside and leave them float up to heaven or something, not knowing then that I was littering, but with the best intention.
I was paper.
Yeah, I know. So I think, yeah, so growing up and after the communion and then up towards I was 14 was really fell out of any sense of a church or God or any religion or anything like that. So grew up to be a very angry atheist agnostic teen, and would have been really into like animal rights and activism and really kind of shouting for the planet and women, and that was kind of a really strong force in my life. But really, like, I didn't know anything about like Reiki. I'd never heard about ceremony work, like anything outside of the church. It was like off my radar, wasn't really there at all. And then would have struggled with my mental health and with like friends, and kind of would have struggled through my teenage years. And then as I reached college, I was smoking too much weed, I was drinking more than would be my disposition, I was just really disconnected, like on loads of hormonal birth control and anti-anxiety medication, and just like really disconnected from any sense of actually who I was, which was quite like a sensitive child. So then when I was around 21, I'd had a trip to Peru as well, which was amazing. I went and worked in an animal sanctuary for a few weeks, and we went and met a couple of local people, and we were like blessed by this local medicine man with tobacco, which I'm sure has something to do with all of this.
Oh yeah.
It was not a
little did you know.
Yeah. And as I left, my friend of mine had given me a crystal to kind of go, oh, keep that with you, like let it kind of keep you safe or whatever, and da-da-da. So not long after I came home, I started researching about crystals and suddenly fractals of the universe, and it was like my brain kind of cracked and just loads of stuff came in, and I was like, whoa. And I was so, loads of it was like YouTube videos, no guidance of like people who knew maybe more about this stuff. It was all very much through the internet as well, like you. And finding videos and being like, oh my god, Dad, you have to watch this, like this makes so much sense. And he's kind of sitting there going, what? And trying to tell all my friends, and they're all really openly listening to me, but a bit like, what? So then I went through this like kind of 2-year process of an ego dissolution, which was really painful and really uncomfortable, and anything I thought I knew about myself kind of fell away, and any places I'd lied to myself or kind of hidden things all came out in really, really painful, uncomfortable ways. So I kind of got really, like I was smoking too much weed, and I got really thin and sick, and my mental health was struggling anyway. So it was just a really challenging time of a lot of these kind of truths of life landing into my being, and then the way that then moves when you're living in a kind of a lie was a really uncomfortable process of taking away all this stuff. So that was kind of, it was kind of a sink or swim kind of a thing. Like I didn't really have a choice. It was either do the work or probably die. So that led me then to, I would have done like a bit of psychotherapy and went to drumming circles, and thankfully found like really nice people to do that with when I was living in Limerick. And my partner at the time, his mother gave me a copy of The Women Who Run with the Wolves book, which I gobbled up. And when I gave back to her, she's like, oh, can I have the book back? I was like, yeah, sure. And I gave back, she's like, oh, what did you think of it? And I was like, oh my god, I loved it. I read every chapter. And she's like, you've read it all? She's like, it's been like 6 weeks. Most people take like 6 years, or take a longer time. Like I really absorbed it and don't remember half of it, but I know that it was like my psyche was so hungry for the wisdom that was in that book. So yeah, then I came back to Cork, and I just had a really kind of slow journey of finding my way back to having some level of good self-esteem, because around that time as well I would have engaged a lot with a lot of like so I was working in environmental education, so a lot of things around climate change and the way the world was changing, and feeling really guilty for being a privileged white European woman. Really guilty, so much guilt and shame, and really kind of squashed myself, like as if I didn't even feel like I deserved a place on the planet. So I had to do a lot of sitting with those really intense feelings, and I would have done a lot of like journaling, meditation. And thankfully I met this man who introduced me to a Buddhist practice, and the Buddhist community had really good principles about like how to engage with community. So, you know, when you really don't want to go to a meeting and you actually feel like getting sick because you don't want to be in a room full of people, but that you really know going to the meeting is what you need because it's really good for you, and then going, and then after feeling like elated because you went and you had a great chat with someone and whatever, you know, breaking out of that cocoon of like anxiety and shame and guilt. So the Buddhist group was really good. It was like a daily chanting practice that I had for about 4 years. Not that I chanted every day, but I did try. Most days.
Most days, plenty.
Yeah. So that taught me a lot of like kind of good practices. Now, and behind all of this, and in my opening, it was all earth-based, because that was what I knew already from my science training, was all ecosystem awareness and earth-based spirituality and connecting with the elements and nature and connecting back to animals and my dogs. That was all there all the time, holding all of this. But definitely, when it came to people and community and actually understanding this work in relationship with people, that was a really big shift for me. And then I started having a lot of connection and opening to Mary Magdalene, which was kind of freaking me out because I'd been so angry at the church for a very long time, like so angry. And then I decided to train as a minister, because my work in environmental education was moving more towards holding the emotional experience of people dealing with the climate change, because I could just see that there were so many other people like me that were just so overwhelmed by the way the world was, to a degree where they can't even function properly because it's so overwhelming. So I was moving more towards that, but as I was moving in, like I had my sound bowls and meditation, I was kind of just practicing, but the more that was going into that, I was like, ugh, what's the equivalent of college here? Like, you know, oh, really wanted good ethics and holding, and like when we met, that was one of the first things I was asking you questions about. It was in a, like, how do you do things well, is has always been a kind of a fear / driver in this work, because it's just so intense, and delicate.
That's one of the reasons I love you so much, and that's like first time I met you, and I was like, oh my god, she really wants to do things right. Because in all fairness, like in all the years, no, I had not heard many or any people, I don't remember anybody else just coming and saying, not to me, but generally speaking to other teachers I've worked with, like to say, look, I really want to do things well, and how can we keep people safe, and how can we do this in the best way. And I absolutely, like, to this day, I respect it so much about you, because with all the abundance of everything that is out there, it's not many people who sit down and say, right, how can we do things right?
Yeah. And like the ministry training that I did, it was only 2 years, which in the grand scheme of things is a tiny amount of time, but it's like one of those courses that kind of as well trains you how to think and how to view life as this like living oracle, and very much like, okay, there's a course curriculum, but it's so informed by the people in the space, and then also by your life and what's there, so it like teaches you how to be kind of a course. So I was ordained like a year and a half ago, but we met before that, which was when I made my drum, which, because drumming had been a big thing when I started Awakening, like going to a drumming circle helped shift and move so much stuff. It was really life-changing and I loved it. So I always knew I wanted to make a drum, and I, was starting a collection of sound instruments, but I'd see a workshop and go, that's nah. And then I saw your one, I was like, oh, this is the one. And when I went, and the first day I met you, I was like, yes, this is why I had to wait to make my drum, because in your work and the way you work, it's not just about, oh, let's make a drum and there you go. It's like, here's the drum, but it's a being and it's a responsibility, and there are teachings that go with having a drum. It's not just, ooh, let's have a drum because it's a cool thing to have, even though it's a super cool thing to have. Would you like to talk more about that in your work, in the work you do, and maybe the drum specifically? Whatever's there.
Yeah, sure. Like that's because I find it so interesting talking to you, and just I'm so happy that these things are available right now. Like even with the ministry course and everything. Like I remember now, this would have been 20 some years ago when I was kind of like focusedly starting out. This was 20 some years ago in Romania. There was not much available, and what was available was just kind of scattered, and so in a way I always had this craving. I had the same craving that you do. Like I really wanted, that's why I really wanted to do things right, and I wanted to not take shortcuts, and I don't understand why. That's just how I'm wired. I don't want to take shortcuts to from knowledge, and one of the things about me was that I could not absorb spiritual teachings through books. So I cannot read spiritual books in any way, because those words, they just they turn into blobs, and I don't absorb any of it. I can read literally any other book except for spiritual books. That's one of the hashtag quirky stuff about Ioana. And so everything I've learned along the years would have been from people who've worked with people. So I would have worked alongside medicine people and teachers from a good few continents and from a good few places, and I would have translated a lot of private sessions. I would have assisted a lot in workshops, and it's just like I was completely obsessed. Like I didn't care if I was not eating for a whole day, or I did not care, if I had to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and work till 10 o'clock at night, and I wasn't getting paid for it or anything. For me, it was just like, no, this is the only thing that makes sense in my life, so I'm going to stick with it. And I actually have a good friend. She lives in the Netherlands now. Her name is Ioana. And I remember after I had started doing this work kind of full time, we went to visit her in the Netherlands, and I remember her saying, "Oh my God, whatever you're doing now, please don't stop, because you're finally at peace." And and I'm gonna take her word for it. Do you know? And yeah, what I do, so it's like a few components to my work. Part of it is connected to Native American teachings, which would be the drum and the sweat lodges and women's ceremonies. That would have come from there, and that I have permission to do and everything like that, and that I would have properly trained to do as well.
Yeah.
And then the other part is just the work that comes to me through dreams and through visions, because like in our tradition, like we don't really have, there are a lot of people who try to do things, but there is not to my knowledge at least, a lineage that I could have followed or that I was even called to follow. So the other part of things are like songs and ceremonies that will come through dreams or through visions, or if I'll do a fast, if I have a question, or if somebody asks something of me and I have nobody to turn to. Well, now thankfully I have a lot of good people around me who are wiser than me and older and wiser than me, but I would have just fasted about it and prayed about it and received the answers that way. And even that I would have doubled and tripled and quadruple checked that it was not out of my own head and woo stuff, kind of a thing. Yeah. And one of the main things that I work with is like, I really love bringing the dignity and the respect back to ceremonies. And just that, like you were saying it so beautifully, that you just, it's cute, it's cool to have a drum, we're gonna get a drum. No, like a drum is a bundle, and it's basically an altar, if you will, and then that comes with responsibilities, that comes with more work. So when people just accumulate all these sacred objects and then they wonder, why is my life not working out good, I'm like, well, because you've got a whole bunch of children you're not feeding, and these are not things. They have a life, and they have their protocol, they have their rules, and like there is a certain way you need to live according to certain bundles that you carry, and many people don't know that these things, and many people don't care either. They say, oh no, because my spirits told me, and I'm like, yeah. And was it really?
Yeah.
Yeah. In the best possible way, because I'm questioning a lot of the things that come, and it's a good thing if you don't question yourself into oblivion or to the floor. But it is a healthy thing.
Yeah. Especially in this day and age where spirituality has kind of merged with this mass consumerism, where you can buy crystal bracelets in a pound shop, and you can get a drum on Amazon, or this stuff where like it's, I think because my background is so much in environmental education and understanding the system we live in, where our products come from, I used to be like a zero waste nerd, like super intense, as little waste as possible. And I was like the town confession box, like anybody who had some environmental confession to make, I was the person they went to be like, I'm so sorry, I'm not perfect. I'm like, it's okay, no one is. But I do have a really good understanding of these systems and how they work and where things come from. And even say, just as an example, crystals, because they're so popular, they are being mined by children.
Yep.
They are being shipped across borders and through countries and places where you actually can't know where they come from or who they come from or the people that they've been in touch with. And likewise with herbal medicines, mass produced, mass farmed, or really extractively taken, and largely because people are under so much pressure, you know, in wherever they are, especially if there's like or people are living on the poverty line and there's a popular medicinal herb nearby, you know, of course they're going to take from it and not do the, you know, when you're foraging, there's like the 1/3 rule. You maybe take a third, you leave a third for nature, you leave a third for the plant itself to restore. So I think having that awareness made me quite wary as well of the spiritual world, of like, ooh, why does this feel like some new fashion fad or something, you know, with all these Pinterest boards and Instagram pages with certain vibes, which was also how I entered it, you know, when before I knew any better, that was my way. And when I was smoking a lot of weed and I didn't know much better and was more disconnected from myself and the land, that was my kind of entry point. So I don't shame anyone who engages with those things, because it's human and it's fine. And equally, as an industry, it causes me a lot of grief. And then, like you're saying, then to have maybe a medicine object that then has also come through those spaces but then has our own prayers attached to it, it's just kind of collecting a whole lot of like energy and debris that it's like, do you really need that? Yeah. It's like like spiritual and physical clutter, and for like what good?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point. I call it spiritual consumerism, and I would work with quite a lot of people who come with the aftermath of that, and just by, like, there's this fad, which I completely understand, because ultimately what I feel most people want or need is to connect.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's the driving force, to connect to something bigger than us, to connect with something that also makes sense of this world that many times is completely senseless.
Yeah.
So I completely and 100% understand where people are coming from with this. Yet I have to, you know, and we're gonna do probably a separate episode on this.
Yeah.
I have to, you know, I talk about these things like, oh, you know, we're gonna go to a different workshop with a different medicine every weekend or every week to a few, and then nothing actually has time to integrate. And then many times what happens is people end up with these double, triple, quadruple open wounds at the same time that can create dysfunction, and that can create hurt, and ultimately it can really create serious mental illness.
Yeah.
If it's not done right. So that's why I'm not too popular in the spiritual circles, because I do talk about these things, because I've just seen enough over the years to go, well, you know, do you want to think about it before you do it? Yeah. Kind of a thing. Just simply because certain hurts just wouldn't, you know, they don't have to be. And then of course, you know, there's the other side, and we'll definitely do an episode about this, about the people who do work for the people, and you know, and they just want to keep in many you know, things. They want to keep the people. They want to keep the people, and they want people to keep coming back, and their focus is not the people, but it's themselves. And in this world, and that was one of our main intentions when we're talking about with the podcast, is to kind of bring a bit of common sense, I would say, into the spiritual world, and confusion that is a lot out there. And for some people it's not, you know, it's not the truth for everybody, but just like to bring this common sense into, look, ask who your facilitators are, and see what their ultimate goal is. Yeah. If their goal, because we, as we do this work, we are working for the people. We're basically glorified servants. Not even that glorified, but I get a kick out of people going, "Oh, I want to be a spiritual teacher." I'm like, sure. I don't know many of us who actually set off saying, right, I'm going to live a life in which I have zero control over my life, and where it takes me, and where I'm going to end up, and what I'm going to do. Yay! Yeah. I mean, I didn't.
one of the lines we had in our ministry course when we were being ordained was that, like, we're healers on the raw edge of love, and at that edge you don't know where you're going, and you don't know what the next step is, and it can be so easy, and we all do it, to like stay in the comfort zone and just stay with what's familiar, and it's like multiple deaths, like jumping the edge and going, okay, I don't know where this is going, but okay, I trust that there's something there to catch me. So it's a really like it makes me think of the word courage, which comes from the French courage, like heart, you know, to live with heart, to really live with heart. It's like you're raw, and I love Christian imagery and things like the Sacred Heart, the raw, thorn pricked heart that's like on fire, bleeding, like, but still going on, ouch, you know, and still emitting love. And it's like, I love how the Sufis talk about how a heart broken open can hold a whole universe, and our heart gets broken open again and again and again and again, and it does. And like you said, we're totally going to talk more on all of those topics that we've kind of mentioned, which I feel like is a nice little introduction to them. But so I know a lot of the work you do is with women and people who have survived highly controlled religious groups and cults and things like that, and I think that's part of why your way is the gentle healing way, as you are on Instagram, and your approach, you know. So maybe you could speak a little bit more into that, of kind of that with what you work. Yeah, like this was one of the things that I would have never chosen to work with this. Like, it's not something like, okay, I'm going to start working with spiritual abuse survivors. No, this was so not something I had planned for myself, because it's gnarly, and it's raw, and it's really long-term work. So yeah, and it's really interesting, because looking back, just like you were saying with the tobacco, you know, how the universe, creator God, throws you little nuggets on the way. Like, I would have for quite a few years, like for 15, 16, 17 years, since I basically started like with workshops and things like that, I would have been surrounded or become aware of people who were in cults. And they were kind of always on my periphery, and I remember always having this really, really strong sense of stay away, or be careful, be aware, keep your eyes open, kind of a thing. And it never made sense. It makes sense now, but it never made sense over that, like back then. But I always kind of listened to it, because I knew that was the good thing to listen to, for whatever reason. It had kept me safe before. Yeah. And so, in a way, I kind of just got a whole bunch of information for many, 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 many years from different angles of the whole cult scene, especially with this one particular cult from Romania. And then, lo and behold, people started coming, and they would have come from those backgrounds. And then I basically had to, you know, I especially in the first few years, it was just like, I was literally just praying that I would do the right thing for them, because I had no, you know, like I didn't know where or how, so I was extremely careful. Jer always says careful, full of care, you know, with them. So I just tried to create safety and love, and then of course do the energetic part of it. But it's quite a tender, and it's quite a raw kind of a work. Yeah. And that's why maybe, you know, because I'm so much in contact with those things, maybe that's why I'm a bit more on the, you know, harsher naming things for what they are kind of a thing, or calling things out. It's just because I've just seen so much pain that was created in the name of God, or in the name of spirituality, or in the name of teachings that have nothing to do with God, and they have nothing to do with spirituality, they have nothing to do with teachings, they have everything to do with control. So then sometimes I kind of lose my cool, especially with
this particular thing. And it's not just, women who survive those things. It's also men. Like it's a lot of people. It's everybody. Everybody's, I don't know. A lot of people are susceptible, and most of us, I think, because we all have our vulnerabilities, right? So
yeah.
But yeah, so this would have been, and then now I kind of, for the past few years, kind of discovered the religious deconstruction community, which was a huge relief, because it's absolutely brilliant. Just to know, it's just on a different, like I would have worked more on the side of people who would have come from either sex cults or, spiritual teachers who would have abused them, and it's just a recent thing that it's become also about religion and high demand religions that way. Yeah. But it's a work that I absolutely love doing. It's not easy. It's definitely not quick.
Yeah.
If you want a quick fix, spoiler alert, think again.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be a big part of, that's very close to my soul.
Yeah, I feel that, and I feel like that's part of why we're connected as well, and through that, because that certainly my own sexual experiences in the world, and how that impacted me as a child and growing up, and just my own journey, like sex was a big part of that, and it's been my biggest teacher and my biggest source of pain. But so then, no matter what I was engaging with, that was always there influencing the behind. So it's been like the thing that I know most is like kind of healing from those sexual wounds. So I found in my own practice, which is still in its like baby years, like up until recently I haven't even really like advertised, I do one-to-one work. Like anyone I've worked with has kind of just come to me and said, I don't know why, but I think I need to work with you. And I say, okay, let's see what we can do, and that just comes up often. And even in like our ministry course, when we spoke about, we went through this beautiful process of healing our relationship with God, and we sat and we wrote 2 letters. So the first letter was everything that we hated and was angry about, and like how could God allow this to be. So that was the first letter, and then you gave it some space, and within that space we had like group sharing about it, and then the next letter was everything that we loved and were grateful for. And in that process and in the hearing of other people's stories, I just had such a huge releasing from my body. And one of the things when I was a teenager that had been like my biggest flare up of anger about the church was the religious sexual abuse of children. Like shouting at my dad one Christmas morning, like, I'm not going to church to worship a bunch of child molesters. And like he kind of looking at my mom for some backup, and she's like, I agree with her. I'm like, bless my dad. But that was my biggest anger. And during that process and that unraveling of healing my relationship with God, a huge piece was like real deep acknowledgement that it's not even that I've been abused by a specific person, it's that I've experienced cultural sexual abuse from being raised in such a hyper sexualized culture. And like I'm one of the first generations that grew up with social media so accessible and like on our screens and on our phones from when we were quite young. One of my first sexual experiences was on a webcam with a guy who was like in his 30s when I was like in my teenage years, and I didn't even realise that was wrong until about 10 years later, where I was talking about it going, oh wait, that's actually like really not appropriate. So I'm very aware of how vulnerable or how kind of ever all present it is, especially now and especially with younger generations. So I feel really like fired up with that sacred rage of like, how do we actually bring good holding and good boundaries around this, as well as then the having experienced, I was on hormonal birth control for 6 years. I know that significantly impacted my outlook and my experience of the world, and now there's more and more hormonal interventions being targeted at young children. So there's a lot in that I feel has been a huge catalyst for my own healing and growth, because they're the things I've had to leverage to move out of. I also journeyed with BDSM as a method of shadow work, which was brilliant. Held with love, it's a really powerful tool. It really helped me alleviate, you know, levels of shame and guilt from my system that really needed to be dug out. And there's this great guy on Instagram, I think we both follow him. He's like, marketing for hippies.
Oh yeah, Ted.
Ted, what a legend.
Bless Ted.
Bless Ted. Shout out to Ted, he's great. And he has this one point where he says, like, speak from the scar, not the wound. And for years that was my biggest wound, but now it feels like a scar, like it feels like a chapter that I've really come to terms with in a big way, and have shifted my life enough that doesn't rule my life anymore, that I actually feel steady enough with myself now to really be open to like holding that space with other people to navigate that, especially people younger than me who've been brought up with that same hyper sexualization, excessive porn access, and then all the ways that's like leached into the spiritual community. Like I've had multiple people share about practitioners who touch them inappropriately in sessions, and it's fucking everywhere.
Do not get me started.
Everywhere. Oh
yeah, and it was really brilliant that and I find this a really particularly good combination, and why the two of us work really well together, because you have a really powerful voice when it comes to your generation's troubles. I have no idea about that. Like I'm to this day, like I will post things on social media, but like anybody who follows me on social media will know that my Instagram is, today I might post a picture of a flower and say, oh, I'm traveling through God knows where, and then tomorrow I'll just go like, let's do a post on really deep spiritual teachings, or and I have no, and that's just the way I'm built. And it's really beautiful, because we're kind of both in a place where we have a lot of we found a lot, kind of a balance within ourselves, within within those journeys. And I remember we were talking earlier at the table, about the priests and the church and everything, and how important it is to not generalize and to not put everybody in the same basket, because not all spiritual teachers are bad, and not all priests are bad. And I was telling him about my experiences with the Lutheran church in Sibiu, and how I just loved being there, because I love being in sacred spaces and in ceremony. End of story. Like I don't care. But like where it is, But and it's really, and it's also important that while we start talking about these things, and while we start talking about the wounds of our generations and of our people, because I'm pretty sure we're gonna go there as well. Spoiler alert. Like while we go there, to keep it as clean as possible, and make sure we're not going to go on witch hunts, and we're not going to blame entire we might throw some rocks at systems, possibly, but not at religions as a whole, or at this or that. Like we're really gonna, and also not, because there are a lot of really good people doing really, really, really good work out there. Everywhere. So everywhere, and in all in all religions, in all creeds, in all spiritual teachings, there are really, really, really good people out there. Our aim is to bring the right questions that are going to prevent people from going to those people who are not who are not doing things for the right reasons, or who are putting people's lives in. So that this is a part of our goal, is to just bring up those questions that are ultimately going to keep people safe. And just so that people can go to the right places, and to find the right teachers and find the right path for them, and then once they do, follow it. That's going to be another episode.
It is. We've done like a whole podcast forecast in this. It's just not laid out super linearly.
Yeah, and you're not going to get linear from us.
You're not.
Oh yeah, another thing is that our episodes, we're going to probably try to record a few in one go and then release them, and there might be a few weeks that you're going to have an episode, and there might be a few weeks when you won't, because
welcome to the mystery.
Welcome to the mystery. Maybe that's what.
Yeah.
Welcome to the mystery.
Yeah, nice. We just found our name. Cool.
Hi. Magic being created.
Yeah.
So welcome to the mystery, dear listeners.
Yeah.
And beautiful human beings. And it feels exciting.
It does. And that point on feeling, I think, is really important as we maybe slowly close this one, is because we're both women who are in this work and in this, space of ceremony and ministry and being with people and serving to the best of our ability. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. It's like we're, especially in Europe where we're both from. So my ancestry is Irish and Dutch. My mom is Dutch, my dad is Irish. And your people are Romanian, going back fairly far, right?
For as far as I know, like most of them are Transylvanian. A few generations back, I have relatives by the Danube, so I recently found this out.
So we're like either side of Europe.
Yeah, we're east and west.
We're kind of stretched across. And I mean, within that, in our very recent history, really, is like the witch hunts, where people that had this kind of wisdom, especially women, and the first of those who were midwives, the women who work with women with wombs giving birth, were the ones that were first persecuted. So in this like returning and this work that we're doing, it's like not linear. It's not this patriarchal aspect. I think that's what the gentle healing way, the slowing down, is to bring people back into the body, because it's so modernized, fast-paced, hyper-consumerist. We've forgotten spirit. There's so much disassociation and disconnection from the mind and the body, which we all know. But I know you're like a super fan of, reading Gabor Mate and Peter Levine and all these lovely people.
I don't love trauma. I really don't like trauma, but I love the fact that we live in a time where we have so many tools to work with trauma. Yeah, that I think that's one of, and I know, like, I will be the first one to refer somebody to a trauma therapist. Yeah. I find that also to be very important.
Absolutely. And just as you say that, it brings just a thought for me that came up earlier, but so much of my work, as I've learned, like you said earlier, that people want connection, has come back to like relationship restoration. How do we communicate our needs? How do we actually be in community? How do we actually have healthy ecosystems of support? How do we make sure we have our supervisor or trauma therapist or body worker or a friend that we go walk the dog with, whatever, but that we are well resourced individuals at like a very community based level. So there's that community care piece, which is essential, and then there's the learning to listen to the body again, because if we're in good connection and contact with the body, very few people would end up in high control religions and organizations and places where, or spiritual teachers that are coming from the wrong place, because our bodies know. And I remember you saying to me that at the very beginning, when you were starting this work, all you had to do was just look at a photo of the person who was hosting a workshop, and within a second or two you could go, nope, yes, because you're in your body and feeling the yes or the no. So it's that remembrance, that gnosis that's coming back through, and that is here in the space with us, and that I hope we're going to bring to our listeners. Yeah. And with that, maybe if you are listening, and maybe if you've forgotten, because we all forget, maybe just taking a breath to kind of go, oh, look, I have a body. I have ears listening, but I have a body. And maybe you're out walking or lying on the couch, whatever you're doing. I hope it's driving. Pleasurable. Yeah. Oh yeah, driving is a good podcast space.
Yeah, it's great. So yeah, we're gonna work through a whole bunch of these things, and we're gonna do a good few episodes, and I really pray that it's gonna be reaching the right people who are gonna just need this, whatever whatever this is going to be, welcome to the mystery.
It's a mystery for us as much as anybody else.
Yeah. We're just gonna roll with it and keep it completely organic.
Yeah.
So do not expect something very regulated and very rehearsed or very, because it's not going to be that.
No.
If you're looking for that, this is not going to be that.
No. And there's a whole ecosystem of podcasts to choose from. But if you are here, thank you for being here. Because it's lovely to sit and chat and know that there are other people there in the ether. And like for both of us, that beginning of our journey with other people listening in other places or sharing, or whatever stage of the journey, it's really nice to have that like invisible community that are also very real and present.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
And it's really good knowing, especially thinking back about how in the beginning of my journey, especially in the very young years, I had really nobody there to talk about the way I was feeling about things and how I was feeling things. And one of the things I promised myself back then, and I'm like, that's one of the reasons why I do what I do, is I promised myself that when I'm going to be in a position, I'm going to be that thing that I needed when I was young.
Yeah.
And so this podcast is hopefully also that for some people.
Yeah.
So if you are, so just to like what this podcast is like the people who this podcast is going to be for, it's going to be for the people who are just now having a spiritual awakening and who are opening that door and going like, whoa, this is overwhelming, we've got you.
Yeah.
And it's also for the ones who have been walking this way for a while and just want to listen to other walkers.
Yeah.
And for, everybody in between. And we are going to probably also have some spaces where we can interact with all of yous. And
yeah, I was just going to say that. We both do community things and we do them together and we do our own things, and Ioana is found all around the world really. So we hope that if you're listening to this, there's also space and an opportunity to actually come to us if you need more connection. You know, we're not just like voices in your headphones. We're like real people with legs and everything and toes.
And toes, especially toes. Mel is wiggling her toes.
Yeah. And we love food a lot. Good food and fires and community gatherings and all those things are like there as well. And as the time moves forward, we will, express and share those things as we go. So my Instagram is Sanctor Cree, which is in Irish, so I will type it somewhere so I don't have to spell it out.
We'll type it in the podcast
description. I'll do that.
You can see how organized we are.
It happens every time someone goes, "Oh, how do you spell that?" I'm like, "Okay, that's my to bring back more Irish words." So you have to explain, which means heart sanctuary. It's a heart sanctuary. And in that, and in one of my intentions for Sanctor Cree is that these are spaces where we can have nuanced, complex conversations where we are really respectful of each other regardless of our views. Like, you do not need to be sitting here and agreeing with everything we say. It's have your own perspectives, share them with us. All we ask is just that you're respectful and kind as possible.
Because even we will have disagreements, or what do you call those? The different opinions, or of course that's that's the point, to just see and listen and see. Maybe sometimes it's about challenging those things that keep us stuck, and sometimes it's about seeing, no, this is actually a really big chunk about of my personal truth. And one other thing that we're aiming for with this podcast is to do the best to support you in making the difference between the two.
Yeah.
So I hope you can find Mel with Sanctor Cree. You can find myself with The Gentle Healing Way on Instagram, right? Instagram.
Yeah. And your
Facebook.
and your
Facebook.
website. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and my website.
Yeah.
My blog website.
Yeah. We're in all the places, but mostly we're in person. But we do our best with online things too, because it's a blessing to connect like that as
Our
well.
inconsistent best.
Yes.
So yeah, we hope you you had a good listen and that you at least had a good few giggles with us. And we're hoping to be in your ears or in your cars back in the future with new episodes.
Yeah, gorgeous. Shine.
Shanae.
Thank you for joining another episode of Welcome to the Mystery. If you like what you've heard and you would like to hear more and sit with us, you can find more of our work through the link tree linked below. This has access to our free community gatherings as well as our private one-to-one spaces and wider ceremony work. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to speak and share our thoughts with you today. Thank you for bringing your heart to the space, and we hope to connect with you again soon. Gurb míle buíochas libh.